for assessment criteria 1.2. We're looking at the forms of ownership. This time around we're going to look into two. We're going to look into private and public limited companies, that is LTDs and PLCs. So when you see the little red daredevil, that's where you're going to get your help. So let's break down lesson 3 of ownership. We're looking at limited companies. So we need to remember what limited companies there are, and there's 2 types. Then we're going to be able to explain liability, because that's part of the definition of a limited company, or one of the 2 limited companies. And then we've got to look at the advantages and disadvantages of both types. Then in the scroll we've got some of the key vocabulary: creditor, which we're going to learn, legal identity, bankruptcy, and registrar of company's house. Now that's something that we're going to cover in this lesson. So we've also got some new jobs as well. We've got compliance officer, workflow manager, and a trading desk analyst. Now these jobs I've made a bit more official, considering we're looking at some of the legal status of companies. What we need to do then is make sure that you can describe the difference between the 2 types, describe the liabilities, and then make sure you've understood the benefits and drawbacks of each type. Here's the work list for lesson 3. Now you might look at that and think, wow, that's quite scary, but it's not actually, because quite a lot of the slides you're about to see are 1 question per slide. So it's not as bad as it looks like. And yes, you're right about number 12. Here's a reminder of limited liability. Private limited companies and public limited companies are so called as their owners have limited liability. This means that people who invest in the business only risk losing the amount they have invested. If the company goes out of business, leaving debts, the owners will only lose the money that they have put into the company, the value of their shares or investment. The owners will not be forced to sell their own personal possessions, like a house, to pay the company's debts. For example, if an entrepreneur invested £100,000 into a limited liability company and the creditor sues the company to recover the money it loaned to the company, check that word out, the creditor loans the company money, the creditor can only get the assets of the company. So you could lose your £100,000 investment, but you couldn't lose any of your personal assets. Not good news for the creditor. I'm sure they want their £100,000 back. First question, what is a creditor? The clue's in the second part of the audio and the £100,000 example. So just replay that bit to make sure you've got that and write the answer in the box. Limited liability, a good point. Having limited liability is the main advantage of forming a company. Limited companies have a separate legal identity from the shareholders. This means that the company can buy assets, make contracts, and take legal action against other businesses in its own name rather than that of its owners. A limited company can also be sued. Look at the example again. That's it, it's above. And I would like you to explain in your own words what you think separate legal identity means. Use this box on the right for your answer. Check your vocab. Here's a piece of information that we need to read, and I'm going to give you a little quick test on some of the words in the next slide. Sole traders and partnerships who wish to expand are often held back by a lack of capital, finance. Another drawback is that they both have unlimited liability, which means that taking risks on new developments, new products or new premises can result in personal loss and bankruptcy. A solution to the problem of lack of capital and to the risk that is associated with unlimited liability is to form a limited liability company. Limited companies are owned by shareholders. These are people who have invested money in order to buy a share of the business. The more shares a shareholder owns, the more control he or she will have within the business. The words private and public refer to the types of shareholders that own the company. If the company goes out of business leaving debts, they will only lose the money that they have put into the company, the value of their shares. Limited liability is important for the owners of companies. They will not be forced to sell off their own personal possessions, like a house, to pay off the company's debts. So it's a point we need to underline so that we understand the limited part of it. In your own words. Using your own words, absolutely no copy and pasting or rewriting and retyping the words, so we can get around that one as well. The answer is no. We've got some words on the left: lack of capital, unlimited liability, personal loss, bankruptcy, taking risks, limited liability and shareholders. You can flick back to the last slide to actually help you understand those words, and in the spaces on the right I'd like you to write your own words, no copying, no rewriting, no, your own definition. Let's check you've got this legal bit. For example, let's have a look at this scenario. If you were shopping in a local corner shop that was a sole trader and you fell over some boxes that were left on the floor, then you would sue the sole trader personally, as he or she is the business. In the eyes of the law, they are one person, they are the same as the business. However, if you fell over some boxes left in Tesco, which is a limited company, not looking at which type yet, we just call it limited, then you will sue the company itself, that's head office Tesco, and not any individuals, Tesco staff, who work for them. The company will have to pay any compensation, money, gifts, that type of thing, from its profit. Now let's check you were paying attention in that last slide. So here's Pictionary. Well, it's a very loosely formed Pictionary. Well, in fact, it's not Pictionary at all. But anyway, all the little images from the last slide, I've got a question for you, so let's follow them. Question 1, who is this? Question 2, what action might these infamous boxes have caused? What? Question 3, what type of company is this? What type of company is Tesco? What does the law say about a sole trader when it comes to suing in the boxes incident? What does the law say about Tesco when it comes to suing in the boxes incident? Question 6. Why won't these people in the picture get sued in the boxes incident? What is getting paid from the profits if the suing became successful? Let's check you've got the rules and regulations, the legal bit now. So by law, all limited companies must register with the Registrar of Companies at Companies House. They must produce a number of legal documents about the business. All limited companies must hold annual general meetings, AGMs, and produce an annual report and accounts for shareholders to keep them informed of the company's performance. This separate legal identity is referred to as incorporation. If a business is incorporated, then it means it is a limited company. In fact, in America, they don't even use the term limited companies. They go straight to the word incorporated companies. So here in this country, we call it limited companies. Limited companies are owned by shareholders. These are the people who own shares in the company. Shares are the parts into which the value of the business is divided. The more shares that are owned, the more control the shareholders get. Well, because I know you enjoyed the last one so much, here's another funny kind of Pictionary. Question 1. What's the name of this job that's being done in the picture? Question 2. Who has to register with Companies House? Question 3. What 2 legal documents do companies need to produce? Question 4. What's the name of this document? Question 5. Who are these? Question 6. Being a limited company gives companies what? Question 7. What does a shareholder need to have lots of control over the company? Question 8. Who is this? A case study, Jed Thomas from Newquay. Jed Thomas is a sole trader selling surfing equipment in his shop in Newquay in Cornwall. Suggest and explain 2 advantages of Jed being a sole trader. Question 1. So fill in the box below where it's got question 1, being a sole trader. And you've take notice there's the disadvantages as well. And then next, surfing has increased in popularity in the area, so Jed wants to take the opportunity to buy the shop next to his. To do this, he needs to raise finance. Jed is considering changing the form of ownership of his business from a sole trader to a partnership. Discuss the advantages and disadvantages that may result from forming a partnership. Put that in the question 2 column. Now I know the question box doesn't say disadvantages of a sole trader, but fill it in because it's going to help you think of what you need in the question 2 partnership ones. Move this red line to the definition which best describes the term limited liability in this first grey box. A limited company has separate legal identity in law from its shareholders, so legally a company has the same rights and responsibilities as an individual. This means a company can buy assets, make contracts, sue other companies and individuals, and can be sued itself. Question for you. If a business is valued at £100 million and there are 200 million shares, how much would each share be worth? Answer in the box below. So you've got 100 million and you've got to divide what number into the £100 million, the value of the company. Shares. The reason why limited companies are split into private and public is because of the people who are able to buy shares in the business. A private limited company can only sell shares privately, hence the name, usually to family and friends. Shares can only be sold if all the shareholders agree. A public limited company can sell shares to anyone. They can be bought by any member of the public, the name. They are sold publicly on the stock exchange. Question 1. What is the stock exchange? Question 2. Who can buy shares of a public company? Question 3. Who can buy shares of a private limited company? LTD, private limited companies, a bit of Q&A for you. So first of all, let's take in some information. Private limited companies are usually small to medium-sized businesses. That's where we get the SMEs, small medium enterprise. Although some larger businesses are private limited companies. A private limited company is owned by shareholders approved by the other owners. They are sometimes, quite usually, family businesses. The profits of a private limited company are sometimes paid to the shareholders in the form of dividends, annual payments to the shareholder, which are a percentage of the profit per share they own. The more shares you own, the more you get. You don't get a higher percentage, it's just obviously a certain percentage per share, and you own lots of them, it means you get a bit more money. But they are sometimes reinvested back into the business. The main aims of a private limited company will be to increase income and maximise its profit in order for the shareholders to receive a good return on their investment. Many private limited companies will also aim to achieve growth by expanding their business and opening more outlets, producing a wider range of products or employing more staff. Growth sometimes leads to the business going public and becoming a public limited company. Well, here comes your Q&A. This is about seeing if you can spot the right information and answer these 4 questions. So question 1, who usually owns a private limited company? Question 2, what is a share? What are usually the main aims of a private limited company? And there are 4 that are in that text. And question 4, how can private limited companies sometimes achieve the growth thereafter for their company. The favourites back, find the fib. You have got the advantages and disadvantages of a private limited company, all listed below. However, they are not all in the right place. There are quite a few this time, not just one. There's quite a few which need sorting back into the correct side and under the correct title. So there's a few imposters under each title. Your job is to find the fib, find the imposters in each pile and sort them back into their right section. So in advantages, there may be quite a few disadvantages, and in the disadvantages section on the right, likewise, they've got the wrong one in each, and you can move each bit of text around. So in the advantages of private limited companies on the left hand side, you've got 5 bullet points for you to have a look at, and you need to read through each one and decide, is it an advantage or a disadvantage? And you need to go through them and you need to check good point or bad point, and any one that you think is a bad point, then you can move it across to the right hand column. And on the right column, you've got disadvantages of private limited companies. There are 6 bullet points to consider, and there's more than one who is the imposter, who is the lie in that column. So you need to go through each of the bullet points and decide which is an advantage. And once you found the advantages, I'll give you a clue, it's going to be more than one, which are in the wrong side, you slide them across to the other, so you've reorganised each of the columns. Here's your Q&A on PLCs. A public limited company, PLC, is usually a very big business with a large number of employees. This type of business is owned by members of the general public and other businesses who have invested their money into the company by buying shares on the stock exchange. People buy shares in the hope that the business will perform well, leading to an increase in the value of their shares. Remember, by owning a share, you get paid with a dividend. Oh look, it's in the next bit. Anyway, as with private limited companies, the profits of this type of business are sometimes paid to the shareholders in the form of dividends and are sometimes reinvested back into the business. To become a public limited company, the business must issue at least £50,000 of shares, and the procedure for setting up a public limited company is more complicated than that for a private limited company. The main aims of a public limited company will be to increase and maximise its profit, we've heard that one before, in order for the shareholders to receive a good return on their investment. Many public limited companies will also aim to achieve growth by expanding their business and opening more outlets, we've seen that one before, producing a wider range of products, we've got that one as well, and employing more staff, we've covered that too. Many public limited companies will also have ethical and environmental aims. Think about how many companies come and help the school as well. That's also called corporate social responsibility. Now, if you notice in that last paragraph, there's quite a few similarities between the aims of a PLC and that of the LTDs, the private ones. The main difference is how they raise their money. Now, a PLC, if you remember, raises its money through selling shares to the general public on the stock exchange. So here are your questions. Question 1. What is the stock exchange? Look it up, but your answer should be in your own words. Or if you know it already, feel free to write your answer below. Question 2. What is a dividend? Slide 14, it has the answer to help you. Question 3. How much money do you need to set up a PLC? Question 4. What are usually the main aims of a PLC? There's 5 of them. Find the fibs back. This time it's for the advantages and disadvantages of a public limited company, as you can see below. However, yes, same as before, some of them are not in the right place. In fact, there's quite a few that are not in the right place. So it's your job to sort them out and find those fibs. So you look at each of the columns and we'll go from there. Advantages of public limited companies. Now you've got 5 bullet points below. You need to have a look through them and decide which ones are the good points, the advantages, and they stay where they are, and which ones are the disadvantages and you move them over to the right. Here are the disadvantages on the right. You've got 5 bullet points there. You need to look through these bullet points, and those which are disadvantages you keep on the right, and any that you think are actually in the wrong place, they're advantages, shimmy them over to the left. So here we go. Here's the last task for you on this limited company ownership lesson, lesson 3. Your job now is to test your limited company knowledge. You've got the 4 questions on the left, and then you write your answers in the spaces on the right. Question 1, describe the main differences between a private limited company and a public limited company. Over there on the right, write your answer down. Question 2, why might an owner choose to form a private limited company rather than a partnership? Put your answer over in the space for number 2. Find out the form of ownership of the following retailers: River Island, Asda, Sports Direct, Iceland, Tesco, Specsavers. Write the answers in the spaces provided. And question 4, select one of the retail businesses above and research its growth since it started trading. So a little bit of extra help on the right. Choose one of them and describe it a bit like a timeline in the box below. There you go. Told you it wasn't that bad. You have now completed that work list for lesson 3, those 12 tasks. Well done. See you for the next lesson, lesson 4, and we've got 2 more left. We've got cooperatives and not-for-profit, so I won't spoil the surprise.